It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with financial advisors Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being with us. My name is Mike Bernard. I am one of the CFPs. I'm also your host. With me, CFPs Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
If you ever receive an inheritance, there are a lot of questions that come up that you're going to be seeking answers to someday. So today we're going to review those most common questions related to inheritances and their answers this week on Wise Money.
That's right. Second half of the program, we are going to be answering questions from you. If you have questions for us, reach out. You can call or text us, 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyradio.com is a spot right there on the right where you can submit all your questions. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we're there too. You can submit questions right there as well, whether that's Facebook or Instagram or the YouTube channel, wherever. Submit questions that way as well. Okay, so I got an email. This is a true story. I got an email earlier this week from a longtime client named Deb. And we've served her for a long time. We serve Mom. We serve Deb's sister. Deb's brother lives on the West Coast, and she says we don't want to work with him. But okay, so I got this email from Deb, and here's what it said. Wanted to let you know that Mom passed away today at 1 p.m. I'm not sure what this means for her money, but I wanted to let you know. She was a great mom. And I often tell people that...
You've got tears in your eyes
it's
just
emotional.
remembering that, don't you?
It's emotional, and you know I'm a crier.
Yep.
So I often tell people when you're working with a certified financial planner and you're doing comprehensive financial planning, maybe we're not a call on the first day, but definitely the second day. You call your financial advisor because they know the entire financial situation. And the emotions are obvious. You're going to be sad. You might be angry. You might be scared. You know, there's grieving that you'll go through, and those emotions just hit you like waves. But the finances, they might not. The questions related to finance might not come immediately, but they will come. And the questions though will be many because figuring out what to do with the money, or even where the money is, isn't really obvious. Yeah. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. This topic was a suggestion from a fan of the show, and then here again, Deb, who we care very much for, her mom, her family, found out her mom passed, and it's real life, unfortunately. So
yeah, when that happens, sometimes it's anticipated and sometimes it's out of the blue, and really there are a couple different jobs that you have to do. One is to attend to the matters at hand. So there are some financial ramifications, and I remember sitting in the funeral home and the guy says, okay, who's paying? And we all looked around, and I had assumed it was someone, and yet that someone didn't raise their hand and say, oh yeah, that's me for sure. So there are the practical matters of just things like who's paying and where is this person going to be buried if this is a sudden event. But there's also, as you said, Mike, there's another job, and that's the job of grieving. So it feels like you've got actually several kind of full-time jobs at once. Yeah. And sometimes the other jobs can crowd out the grieving piece and kind of put that on pause for a moment. But the longer you don't attend to that and don't do that work, the kind of the harder it might hit when all of the other jobs are done.
Yeah. You know, sometimes it's well-intentioned, good-meaning folks around you, people that love you, that may even cause some of that crowding out of the grieving. You know, if it was a spouse that you lost or someone that, a close family member where you were somehow tied to their financial life, they may suddenly start asking you questions like, have you done this? And have you attended to that? And maybe there are some time-sensitive things that come up when you've lost a loved one. But, it's difficult when other people are kind of pushing an agenda upon you and maybe forcing you to deal with some some decisions or some actions before you're even ready. And so I feel like it's important to have someone in your life that you can turn to who can kind of bring some calm to the situation and help you understand, okay, what are the issues here? What are the actions that you're eventually going to need to deal with? But also, what's the timeline? A lot of this stuff can just wait.
So we're going to be talking about receiving an inheritance and what are those questions. But I guess before we even jump into that, this discussion has kind of gotten me to the point, if you're listening to this and you're not really sure you've got everything laid out the right way, or that even your loved ones would know where everything is financially. I met with some folks yesterday who said, here's our financial plan, these are our goals, and then here's our plan if I pass. He had gone through a medical crisis 2 years ago and laid everything out. This is the first person you call. This is where the money is, so on. And most people aren't that thoughtful, and most people emotionally just can't really do that. So if you're thinking about, well, geez, an inheritance might be nice, but someday I'm going to pass, and I don't even know what the plan is, or if the people that need to know where stuff is, if they really know where stuff is, you got to get started working with a certified financial planner.
Yeah.
And because they're the ones that will have your full financial inventory. They're the ones that will make sure that you've got beneficiaries that are correct, that you've got the right estate plan, and that plan is implemented.
Yeah, walk through that financial fire drill and make sure that you are ready when the time comes, because we are all leaving this earth at some point. So I would encourage you to make sure your finances are orderly.
That's right. All right. So if you are in a situation where you're going to be receiving an inheritance, I listed the 5 most common questions that we hear all the time from clients. And by far, the most common is this first one, and that is it taxable?
Yeah. In fact, it's so common. I feel like I answer that question several times for people, because it's like, hey, no, just tell us again.
Yeah.
We're not going to get hit with a tax on this, right?
Right.
No. On these assets, you will not pay a tax in this particular case. But what an important question to ask, because really it depends on what you're inheriting, or how you're inheriting it, and what kind of tax we're talking about too, right? Because our minds maybe go to income taxes quite often. But there's also, previously we also had to deal with estate taxes at the federal level or inheritance taxes at the state level. Maybe there are some states out there that still have an inheritance tax, but most don't. In fact, for most Americans, even the federal estate tax has gone away as long as you're under $11 million that you're leaving behind. 11.4, I guess, is the exact amount. So what it leaves are things like income taxes. Are you going to have to pay tax at your tax rate when you inherit certain assets? And the answer is it depends on what we're talking about.
Yeah, that is actually an interesting surprise to a lot of folks. And last night I was meeting with some folks, and she had an IRA and a non-IRA account, and she was trying to understand, well, what is going on, because I've got this IRA. I think I have to take some money out of it. And she's in her 50s. I have to take some money out of it. And I said, well, did you inherit that money? Well, yeah, I got it from Dad. But I still don't understand why I have to take money out of it. And the truth is because Dad never paid the taxes on it. It was in an IRA, 401k, whatever it was, for Dad. And now the taxes that were never paid are going to be extracted from her share of the inheritance.
I even had someone, we're going to break down the different types of assets that you would inherit have very different tax consequences when you receive them. I had someone that inherited a Roth IRA, thought they understood the rules. By the time we met, it was 3 years after inheritance, and they didn't understand the rules. They weren't following it correctly. Inheriting an IRA from a parent or other family member that's not a spouse, that has a different rule as well. And then there's this big mistake when inheriting other types of investments that aren't IRA or Roth IRA. And it actually, this mistake, I've seen people pay more tax than they actually should. We'll tell you that and more coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right, YouTube, thanks for being with us today. If you're new to the Wise Money Show channel, welcome. And I'd encourage you to subscribe to the content. We've got a show that posts every single week here on Saturdays. And then also different videos that we'll post throughout the month as well. So subscribe to it, turn on that notification button, and I tell you what, leave any questions, comments, or anything below. We'll answer questions either right here in below or also on an upcoming show. So thank you. All right.
Hey,
I teased that out there because even just yesterday, and this is bonus content on YouTube, but we better have this on the air. When people are entering that last stage of life, they start putting people's names on money. And they say, oh, I'm going to do them a favor, and I'm just going to add my son and daughter's name to this account. And Ben had one yesterday from a client that you used to have servicing responsibilities for that she did that. And Ben said, no, you got to move that back because now you just meant half of that will not get a step up in basis, and therefore half of it is going to be taxable to him when you pass away.
Well,
Yeah, we do need to
that. Well, I'll tell you what I would love to talk about is the case that we worked on Wednesday in case class.
Oh yeah,
because we said, hey, there's a tax benefit for the home going forward. Well, there's actually a tax benefit going backwards. That's about a $6,000 swing there, but it gets even better. That allows what would be taxable to the kids, whatever chunk they're spending on the home, that chunk can a corresponding chunk can be moved from IRA to Roth IRA, so the kids don't pay taxes on that chunk.
If you're doing planning, otherwise you just say, "Oh, that's awesome. Mom hasn't been paying tax." I mean.
So because the even though this is a show about inheritance and what questions should I ask, in order to ask great inheritance questions, you need to ask great questions before the inheritance comes.
Yeah. So let's throw that in there here still within this taxation section and just say, hey, quick tangent and share that, and then we'll keep going. So.
Okay.
All right. Ready? If you receive an inheritance, if you leave an inheritance, is it taxable? It's the most common question people have. We answer it all the time. We're answering it and the other most common inheritance questions today on the Wise Money Show. Thanks for being with us. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Wanted to say thank you to the attorneys at South Bank Legal, as well as First State Bank, for making the Wise Money Show possible. If you want to catch up on all Wise Money content, you'll find us online, wisemoneyradio.com, and then all over social media, wherever you're at, we're there too, and you'll get all the Wise Money content there. Just search The Wise Money Show. All right, so we're still in this most common question when you're receiving an inheritance, and that is it taxable? Now, we've already said, well, it sort of depends on what you're receiving. If you're inheriting an IRA from a parent, let's say, that someone you weren't married to, then when you receive it, you can take it all out at once. Seen that happen. We've answered that question on the show before. And guess what? It's all taxable. Mm-hmm. And when you get your taxes done, you'll start wondering, can I stuff some of this money back in? So you need to be careful. But you don't have to take out all of it, but you do have to take out some of it. Required minimum distribution. Be working with a certified financial planner to help you with that. If you receive an inheritance of a Roth IRA, there's a couple choices that you have. You either have to take a little bit out, or you've got to take it all out within 5 years. Is that right, Josh? Mm-hmm. So I was meeting with someone who wasn't taking money out each and every year and therefore needed to cash it all in within 5 years. And so you, again, work with a certified financial planner. But here's the big mistake where people wind up paying more tax on an inheritance when they really shouldn't. if you have a non-IRA account, so just an investment account, and there's gain in there, capital gains, when you pass away, or when someone passes away and you inherit that, the basis, which is jargon, how would you say it better?
Well, I don't know that I would. Cost basis is it's a term that a bunch of accountants would use, but it's a term that you also need to know. Think of this as the already taxed money. Maybe it could be the original money that you put into or your family member put into an investment, or the amount that it's grown to because they pay tax on more and more of it as time goes on potentially. But think of it as money that's already been taxed, and it's hopefully grown to a bigger amount yet, and that's the gain, that's the growth or the profit that's built up over time. If your family member had sold that during their lifetime, then they would have paid a special tax rate, capital gains rates on that money. But in this case, we're talking about maybe some mutual funds or some other investments that were left behind to you. It never got sold during that original owner's lifetime. And the cool thing is in most cases, that gain or that profit gets wiped clean, so it's not taxable for you.
They call that a step up in basis. Now, here's the mistake. If you're reaching that end stage of life and you're maybe in that chapter, oftentimes, with really no fault of your own, it's with the right intentions, you say, well, I'm going to put this money in my son and daughter's name. And I'm going to start making things easy for them. And you might even think to avoid some taxes because you're still thinking estate taxes. And I'm going to add their name to this account. Well, when you do that, they're now a joint owner. When you pass away, only your portion. So if it's owned 50-50, then only 50% gets that step up in basis. So I don't know if you guys see that a lot, but all the time I see it where people try to take control and say, I'm going to help them out and I'm going to just give this money to them now before I pass away. And you give the cost basis that otherwise would have been stepped up.
Right. So that is a tricky thing.
Especially on the radio to explain.
Well, right. But dealing with, the big idea is if you've got appreciated assets, be very careful about how you handle them, especially towards the end of your life, because there's a gamble. And you say, hey, if mom keeps this in her name, it's subject to a Medicaid spend down. If she gets rid of it, she also gets rid of her cost basis as well, and that goes to the receiver of the gift. So there's some big time planning issues. But Mike, you said, people are paying taxes on an inheritance that they shouldn't. And I'll tell you what that reminded me of is this week when we were working on a case in case class, and mom's in a nursing home, and it's about $4,000 a month. And I was looking at this going forward and saying, hey, on a going forward basis, we can deduct this because of mom's current condition and her health. Well, Ryan Fair is one of our CPAs, and he said, well, actually, you can deduct those expenses going backwards as well. And we were all kind of looking at him a little strange and scratching our heads like, what is he talking about? But Ryan is – our CPAs are kind of frustrating to work with because they never really make mistakes. And so they'll tell you things that don't make sense to you, and you think, well, that's got to be wrong. And then they'll prove it that they're right. So not only going forward, but going backwards, they can deduct it. So a dutiful son is just bringing in mom's information to the tax preparer. The tax preparer is taking the numbers, putting them in the boxes, not asking questions, not doing planning at all. And sure enough, mom's overpaid. We're going to go back about 3 years and get back about $9,000 for mom.
It sounds exciting, but that's not the real excitement. What that means is there's now this big deduction that hasn't been accounted for. And in the past, that means bigger refund. But going forward, it means, listen, mom's got some IRA money that when the kids inherit it, you're going to have to take some money out of this thing every year. You're going to have to pay tax on it. But mom's got this big deduction right now. So let's start moving some of that IRA money over to a Roth IRA. and doing that to kind of offset that deduction so that we do that at no tax.
Well, and that avoids the heartbreaking story that we see quite often where someone receives an inheritance of that IRA money and now they have to start paying tax on it as they pull money out on an annual basis. And we find out kind of retroactively after the fact that mom or dad who left the money behind, they were in a 0% tax bracket and really not pulling much money out of these accounts all along. And so that's one of the reasons why inheritance brings up the topic of multi-generational tax planning.
And not just for the wealthy. Not just for the wealthy. Actually, you guys have heard me say it before. There are several if you're not doing planning, the middle class is getting squeezed because you're giving a little bit too much money to the IRS that you should have been keeping. You're giving too much money to insurance companies because you're not managing deductibles, your coverage quite the right way. And so financial planning, these strategies, multi-generational planning, man, even if you're just in the middle class, I don't care where in the middle class, you need to be doing that too.
Yeah, there's so back to this case, there's an offset, this deduction where mom can move IRA money to a Roth IRA. Well, she can't move her required minimum distribution to her Roth, but she can move everything else. So if mom moves $50,000 a year over the next 3 years to her Roth IRA, the kids inherit the money totally tax-free.
Yeah. And mom never paid any tax or close to nothing, to no tax.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is where it seems like there are two, out of this one question, there are a couple calls to action. One is make sure you are working with someone to do tax planning. If you are either 60 and beyond, or you're helping, or you're one of the dutiful adult children serving your parents who are in the later years of their life, make sure that you are doing tax planning, because there may be some opportunities there to make sure that while mom and dad are living, they're doing stuff that minimizes what you would pay when you actually inherit the money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, we might need to change what we say. I mean, we often, when we're talking about taxes, we often talk about you want to pay the least amount of tax over your lifetime. I don't know how to say that any better, but it's really over multiple lifetimes, right? Or throughout the family tree, you want to make sure you're paying the least amount of tax.
You might be able to pay some tax today proactively so that your kids don't pay tax at a much higher rate down the road.
Yeah, that's right. All right. What about the second most common question? Well, if I have a will, what do I do? If I don't have a will, what do I do? We've got that and more coming up here on The Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
So
good. Man, this is fun.
That reminds me. So last night, we're doing this 401k enrollment, and the people are kind of filtering out, and I asked this lady, so do you have any questions? No, but I'll turn in my form when you guys come in a couple weeks. I said, so what's going to change between now and then? She's like, oh, nothing. And I said, so is there any reason why I wouldn't just turn in now? And she's like, yeah, you're right. So she goes back in and talks to Jake and gets it filled out and does it. And I think about this, and it's sometimes you have these.
I can just see what Jake. Excuse me. Yes, ma'am. Yes, there is someone standing in front of the door. He won't let me leave until I give this to you. So that's a made-up name.
Blank.
But I mean, this is the same thing because you say, hey, what if you paid a little bit more taxes in your lifetime at a much lower rate, and your children got this money tax-free? And so, what's the objection? Well, I don't really care how much money my children get. That's fine. I understand you don't care how much money your children get. Would you rather your children get it or the IRS?
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, this is the interesting thing. So this case that we were working on Wednesday, mom's in Michigan. Is anything registering? Like, mom takes IRA money out, pays federal taxes.
No state tax?
No state tax. Mm-hmm. Guess what the kids are going to pay if they inherit it?
Right.
They live in Indiana.
They're going to pay federal and state taxes.
Right. Even if they live in Michigan, right? Because it's
It's
an age thing.
dependent on age. Thank you, Governor
you.
Schneider. So this is the
It's the first time that's ever been mentioned, or those words have ever been uttered together. Maybe.
what words?
Thank you, Governor Snyder.
I have a friend that for a number of years on a certain social media, his response to everything was, "Thanks, Schneider."
Oh.
So anyway,
not sarcastically.
Yeah.
That's, okay.
No.
He was saying it sarcastically.
Yeah, sarcastically.
Yeah, I know, but what you said wasn't sarcastic.
yeah, I mean, I moved to Michigan thinking that I could live long and prosper and someday retire there and take my retirement money out without paying state taxes.
All right, so
Now
starting
I'm going to have
segment
to move to North Dakota.
starting segment 3. We've got. I mean, we're still in that first question, so let's transition to second question, third, fourth. Let's hit these a little more rapid fire. There shouldn't be as much conversation, I don't think, especially with this next one or two.
We didn't talk about life insurance, the house. I guess we're going to talk about house down here, but
Yeah,
There-
we can
this
feather
is-
it back in as we need to.
This is really a 2-episode show, if we're going to be honest.
A two.
2-episode show. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The episode has 4 segments.
Yeah. All right. If you're receiving an inheritance and you're helping maybe the family go through the estate planning process, do you need an attorney? When do you get an attorney involved? And what's that process like? That's what we're talking about today. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being with us. My name is Mike. Here with me in the KFG studios, Josh and Kevin. Thank you to Bethel University Adult and Graduate Studies, as well as Diane Bennett and the Inspired Homes team. If you are not watching right now on the YouTube channel, I just remind you that every episode, including this one, is on the YouTube channel. Check it out. Just go to YouTube and search The Wise Money Show. Turn on notifications as well as subscribe to the channel so that you're up to date on all Wise Money content that we're pushing out there on that show. You can even submit questions, comments right there as well. All right, we're talking about what are the common questions when you receive an inheritance that you're going to be asking, and so we're trying to help prepare you for that right now. The first one is, well, is it taxable? And we've talked about that. There's even a couple pieces that we haven't quite hit yet within that, but we might here in a moment. The second most common question, though, is, do I need to get an attorney involved? And that sort of depends on the size of the estate, also depends on whether there's a will or not. What else would you guys add there to that?
and that's where my mind went as well. It's whether or not a will was doing most of the heavy lifting on determining where everything goes after that loved one passes away. Not everything goes through a will. In fact, in a perfect world, very little will. No pun intended there. We don't want a lot going through the will because the will creates a probate process that becomes kind of a dirty word to a lot of families. I don't know that it really should be, but probate, if you've heard that term before, is essentially just the court-supervised process of validating someone's will, confirming, yep, this really was their last will and testament. This is an expression of what they wanted to have happen to their stuff after they passed away. And after that has all been validated and everything, then the executor is free to actually go ahead and distribute and carry it out for them. Most people use an attorney to go represent them in that process because they don't want to mess with it or don't know how, quite frankly. If it's a small enough pile of assets that is going through that will, then you may be able to avoid the probate or have a very streamlined process by filing something called a small estate affidavit, which again, that's jargon, but it basically says, hey, this estate is small enough, under $50,000, and so let's not take up the court's time with an elaborate probate process. Let's just have this be quick and easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with Joshua. The probate occasionally gets a dirty or a bad reputation, or it sounds like a dirty word. Probate's just probation, just putting your stuff on probation and making sure that the rightful heirs are getting their money and there's not a claim on that estate or on that money by someone else. I would agree wholeheartedly with Joshua. The what is commonly referred to as the poor man's will, you can get a lot of stuff done with the ownership of the assets and by naming beneficiaries. So if you name a beneficiary to your asset, that's where the money's going, and it doesn't pass through your will.
If you're listening right now thinking, oh, yeah, this is another reminder of something that I just need to do, but I haven't done, I need to get that will. Before you even do that, I'm not going to talk you out of that, but before you even do that, go through and make sure you've got all the beneficiaries correct on your stuff.
Get your ex-wife off of your life insurance policy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these things that you can do that will put you in actually a pretty decent position, and there are likely then a few other smaller items that may need to go through your will. But again, it totally depends, and it's with just a little bit of planning, a lot of these things can be figured out and taken care of.
All right, so the next common question, this kind of goes back to some taxes as well, but I hear this a lot. I think because it's emotional and it's often one of the larger assets that people leave in an inheritance, and that is, what do I do with the house?
Yeah. It kind of depends on whether or not the surviving family members need that house, right? I mean, this is somewhat a lifestyle or a practical type question. The nice thing is that in most cases, that house or land may be inherited completely tax-free. And now there are ways to mess that up. So every time I state a rule, there's an exception to the rule. But as a rule of thumb, you wouldn't expect to pay a bunch of tax on mom or dad or aunt or uncle's old house, okay? So now it becomes just a question of, well, how do you sell that property or hold it, depending on what makes sense for the family members that are inheriting it.
Yeah. For this, it's emotional, and therefore it's difficult and can sometimes take a lot of time. I don't know what your guys' experience is, but I've seen people that haven't even gone in to clean the house out just because it's so emotional for 6 months. They just say, and even schedule it. I live in town, and so, I know where mom's house is, but the siblings live away, and I'm not going in to clean stuff out until they come in with me, and then we can kind of talk through things and be there and reminisce and so on. But oftentimes, the house, you've got to work with the other siblings, family members to go through everything, and then you've got to talk to a realtor, and maybe there's some pent-up maintenance that needs to be done, and then eventually sell it at the right time, listing it at the right price, and so on.
A scenario that I've seen multiple times that brings out a lot of emotions in many family members and can even create some dissension between siblings is, have you seen scenarios where maybe a lake property or some sort of family gathering place is being left behind to the family? I've known of some clients who they with their siblings have inherited mom or dad's old lake house. It's the place we all always went to and gathered over the years, and mom and dad wanted it to stay in the family. Mm-hmm. But the only way that it can stay in the family is if all the siblings are on the same page.
Yep.
Right? And it only takes one. It only takes one to say, you know what, I either can't afford the maintenance on that, my share of the maintenance. It's not practical for me and my family to own that because my kids and grandkids aren't going to go to that old family gathering place, whatever it is. But suddenly you can have some cracks forming in family relationships over an asset that used to be just a beloved, home or something. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're establishing your own estate plan. Sometimes you have these intentions or these visions for what this asset's going to do for the family after you're gone, but just recognize it's those who inherit it, those who receive it, they have to be on the same page with that. Otherwise, your vision may not actually be carried out.
The place that used to bring people together is now the thing that's separating the family. Yeah, that is tough. I've seen it, though.
I've seen it, too. I've seen it actually work where mom and dad left a certain amount of money in a trust that covers the cost. But it's still, these gathering places are awesome ideas, and having participated in a gathering place, there's a lot of work. There is a lot of work. And so you think of 4 siblings sharing this gathering place, and if they're not hiring all the work done, it's usually the one that gets there the most often that does all of the work. And it doesn't take too many years of that happening where that one doing all the work says, wait a minute, well, how come I'm doing all the work here? And, my siblings will, they came for a week in the summer and it was a great time, but I don't want to be responsible for the leaves this fall.
Can I throw in one important detail here? If you're inheriting that gathering place that we've been talking about, or some land that you think mom or dad intended for it to stay in the family, at the time they pass away, you need to go in and establish what the value was on the day they passed away. That is a little bit of detail that you may need 10, 15, 20 years down the road. If there's ever going to come a day when it will eventually be sold, you have to know what the value of that property was when mom or dad passed away. Otherwise, you don't really know how much is going to be taxable someday.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, there's at least one more other common question when it comes to receiving an inheritance or helping with loved ones who have passed away in their financial situation. This next one's about Social Security, and you will not believe me. You will not believe me when we talk through this. So we've got that and more coming up here on The Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right, a little bonus content for YouTube. Yeah, the case that I started with, this friend, Deb. So mom sold the house up here, but she had a summer home that she's had for a long time down in Florida. And it was the family gathering place.
Summer?
What?
It was a summer home?
Winter home. Sorry.
That's okay. Just checking.
Yeah. And
I don't know. I mean, I summer in Florida? No, thank you very much.
No.
Like living in a swamp.
The air conditioning works even better down there. So winter home. Thank you. And yeah, I've been talking to Deb for a while about, okay, so what happens? You and your sister go down there. Your sister actually spends more time than you down there. Your brother never goes. What's going to happen to that? Because this is the thing. Let's say that property on the channel is worth $1 million. Well, the value gets split 3 ways. Well, if only one person wants it, now that's a drain on their financial situation. They've either got to take out a loan or take out some cash or something. If 2 of them want it, well, then that could be easy or that could be very difficult. Mm-hmm. And so...
But this is the issue when you're dealing with inheritance in either the family farm or the small business, because the liquidity event and assume that either the family farm or the small business is fairly illiquid. So the event is I've got a business that needs to be divided by 4 or a farm that needs to be divided by 4, and the one sibling that stayed home and is running the farm is saying, I can't borrow that much money and pay out my siblings, so now what do I do? And so a lot of times that can be planned for, but it's the unplanned events that catch people off guard, and they say, hey, we haven't made any provisions for buying out the siblings so this is where there's kind of the simple end of this and the incredibly complicated end of this.
Yeah. Work with your certified financial planner. I mean, that's the big idea. So
yeah, that's the role of the certified financial planner, is to do the design work to understand what you're trying to accomplish in your financial life, and then take that game plan to the attorney who's helping to implement it.
That's right. And get it implemented. Yep. And especially, so if you have a multi-generational asset within the family, whether that's a gathering place, whether that's a business, farmland, whatever it is, and you're not doing comprehensive financial planning, you really that's another reason why you really need to, because when whatever event occurs, if you guys don't have a game plan that's been planned for, it won't be executed, or what you planned will be executed, which will be chaos. Mm-hmm. So, all right, 4th segment, land in the plane. The first question, coincidentally, is sort of fits with this episode. I'm tempted to skip that so that there's more diversification in the show topics.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to switch to the 4% rule, depending on where we're at with time. But
Wait, this is the third segment?
it's fourth.
Oh, my. So this is the fourth segment.
Fourth segment. So we're going to talk about what happens with income, which is probably pretty quick, and then we'll just say, all right,
So you don't want the other questions?
what are the questions?
You said, what are other common questions?
No, I feel like we need to keep going.
I'm glad I prepared.
The show's going to suffer, though, if we don't get those out.
Okay.
I
You
can,
got a bullet
So-
of this. Could
so
you just
someone
crank
can-
through 'em?
dude.
Yeah, someone can wrap up.
I can
when we're
can
done
rap.
with, yeah, when we're done with this, just I would
Lindsay knows I can rap.
let's just we've got to try to get to a question. In this.
No, let's get to a question.
Okay.
Why should we get to a question?
All right. Yep. Will you stop? Can you guys, we're about to go on the air. All right.
Just tell me when you're ready, Mike.
You ever see those the newsroom bloopers where like you just people can't get started because everyone's sort of giggly? Got that going on in the Wise Money studio. All right. Thanks for being with us today. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name's Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, as always, Josh Gregory and Kevin Korhorn. If you've missed anything and you love listening to podcasts, we've got a lot of followers of the Wise Money Show on podcasts. So wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find us there. Search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it, and I'd ask you to rate it and leave a comment as well. Thank you very much. All right, we're wrapping up the headlining topic today, which is what do you do if you receive an inheritance? Obviously, there's tons of emotions that you're going to be sorting through, but there's some financial questions that will inevitably come up. Usually within the first 48 hours or so, you'll start stressing out about some of these questions. And we're hitting our top few questions today. The last one isn't even fair. It's not going to sound fair. What happens to the monthly income that mom or dad was getting? Will that continue for you, like Social Security and their pension? What happens with that?
Yeah, well, so I'll start with the pension because that one, it just depends. It depends on how they structured the pension payout. Some people, if you're inheriting or if it was a loved one who passed away, not mom or dad, it was a spouse, it's possible that they created a survivor benefit with that pension and it will continue on to the spouse's lifetime as well. Other pensions will have a minimum number of years that it will pay out, maybe
Possibly.
a 10-year minimum. So even if mom or dad passed away early in retirement, 2 or 3 years in, there might be another 7 years of it being paid out. So it all depends on how they made their pension decision at retirement.
But if we were to make it simple, most of them, they just
done.
stop.
Exactly.
They stop. What about Social Security, though? This is unfair. And I don't even, I didn't look it up.
Oh, Mike.
Because
We don't say it's not fair in our
Joshua,
household.
did you tell Mike that it was going to be fair?
they give your Social Security to you, they find out you passed, and then they pull it out of your account. And I don't even know, does that happen for everyone, or is there a certain stipulation or something, a threshold? But I've just heard from several people, when they find out that the person has passed away, they pull the Social Security back out of their account for that month.
That's right, because the moment that someone passes away who's drawing Social Security, they are no longer eligible to keep on receiving. And yet Social Security doesn't know that they've passed away until you notify them. So the check is just being deposited directly into their bank account as always.
And no, that is not a financial planning strategy right there.
What's that? Don't notify them right away?
Right.
Yeah, because as the money builds up in that bank account, just know that the government will claw it back.
It doesn't seem fair. Doesn't seem fair. I mean, the month of someone passing, they should at least, okay, yep, we gave that one to you.
No,
We're sorry
no.
sorry you passed away. There are expenses.
Why would you
Go ahead.
stop there? I would say the year in which you die, you should be able to have all of your Social Security.
The decade.
I mean, if you're going to be fair, the century.
The century. That's right.
Hey, listen, I could get some votes here. Call me Santa Claus.
All right, so let's put this all together. What other real quick common questions come up real quick before we transition?
So a couple of common questions. One is, what should I do with the money? What do I do with this money? And the money is either going to be a blessing or a curse. And so the idea is whoever it was that left this money to you, the odds are they wanted this money to bless you and to be a blessing. And sometimes you're so far into it that you can't see the forest for the trees. And so it's hard to make a good decision. It's hard to make an objective decision. So get with someone who can help you make an objective decision. Another question is, how do I respond to family members who know I have money now and want to borrow it? Family members or new friends that come out of the woodwork and share their sob stories with us and say, oh, I've got this awful thing and this awful thing and this awful thing because of the horrible life decisions I've made. Don't you have great pity on me, and can't you help me out a little bit here?
You know what? I had a client once who he knew he was going to pass away. He had been given less than a year to live. And so he came to me and asked that I play a very specific role after he passed, and it was to be the guy who says no. Because he knew that his wife was going to be inundated by the kids
Did you
with
say
their
no?
hands out.
When he asked you?
You don't
Just-
say no
just to
to
show
a
that
dying
you-
man's last
But just to
request
show
of
that
you.
you're up to the task?
I would have given him some proof right there.
That's right.
Will you do that, Joshua? No.
Guys. No, because he recognized that tendency in his kids, and he had no problem telling the kids no during his lifetime. But if suddenly his wife was flush with extra cash because of life insurance proceeds, and she's grieving and she wants to help, that just puts her in a terribly awkward position because she's capable of helping, but it doesn't mean it's best for the kids. Mm-hmm. So you're exactly right, Kevin. How do you make a decision on? And it could be the kids. It could be a charity, coming and
It could be
reaching
your
out.
siblings.
Yeah.
When you receive an inheritance, or if you're hoping to someday leave an inheritance, it obviously impacts your cash flow and your present financial position, whether that money should stay in cash or pay down debt or something like that. It obviously impacts your protection plan, life insurance or long-term care insurance when you're dealing with an estate situation and end of life. Those are obviously critical pieces there. We've talked ad nauseum about the tax implications of an inheritance and how you could structure things during your lifetime to have those people that would inherit your resources pay the least amount of tax possible. How it's invested plays a big role in that. Some people's retirement plan is greatly dependent upon receiving an inheritance. Now, I would tell you right now, don't build a retirement plan that only works if you receive an inheritance. Have it be a blessing, but it will impact your retirement plan. And then estate planning is obvious. Do they have the right structure? Do you have the right structure? Who's playing what role? What I just did there is talk through all 6 areas of your financial life. And if you're not looking at an inheritance through all 6 areas and seeing where there's synergy, and if you're not looking through your own life and projecting out a potential inheritance that you'd like to leave behind through those same 6 areas, then I would just say it this way: you're not doing it right. You need comprehensive financial planning when you're receiving an inheritance to plan for it appropriately, or if you're hoping to leave an inheritance someday. So, all right, we are going to transition. That topic took a while, but I want to make sure we get one question in here. Let's see.
Linda's question?
No, let's transition. I want to jump down to Brian's question. Brian's 49 from Granger. Because this one just grinds my gears.
Good
Pun
pun
intended.
there. Yeah.
What is the longest you would stretch out a car loan? They've got it out there for 7 years right now, right?
Yeah, they keep on stretching them a little longer and longer. And true. Maybe a brand new car will have a longer life, and that might be part of it. But they're just the longer you stretch the loan, the smaller you make the payment, but also the more interest you're going to bleed over time. Right. So how long do you want to have that in place? In my opinion, if you estimated that a car's useful life for you is going to be, I used to say 10 years, but it's more like 15 years. But you may not be willing to drive it for the last few. Maybe it's not as reliable or something. But so say it's 10 years. If you spent the first maximum of 5 years paying it off, and then the next 5 years continuing to make that same payment to yourself, but you're building up a reserve or a pile of cash to go pay cash for the next vehicle. That's how you start. You make this long loan the last loan that you ever use.
I would have said the same thing, but only do 5 years if you really need to. Try to do 4 or 3.
Yeah.
But for the same reason, though. So then you have extra time to save up cash for that next vehicle so you're avoiding a loan.
Even if you have a 0% payment, simplify your financial life. Get those payments paid off. The first $100 a month goes into the savings for maintenance, and then the next $300 at least goes towards the next car.
Okay, so watch out. I mean, if we're seeing the 7-year loan, we'll see the 8-year and the 9-year loan. Yeah. I've heard of 40-year mortgages. And so you just need to watch out. I mean, if you're just managing based on payment in your budget, you could be talked into one of these things. So be very careful. Make sure you're doing financial planning. Your CFP will help you with it. All right, that's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, and myself, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.